You're listening to the Piano Parent Podcast with Shelley Davis, episode 353. Hey there, and welcome to the Piano Parent Podcast. I'm Shelley Davis, a longtime piano teacher and parent with my husband of 4 mostly musical kids. As parents, we spend so much time trying to encourage and motivate our kids. We wonder if we're doing the best things for them. We second guess our decisions, and we worry if we're going to scar them for life. While you focus on encouraging your kids, I'm here to reassure and inspire you. I'll be here every week with practice tips, inspirational teacher interviews, and musical topics to help you impress your kids with your musical knowledge. Parenting is not for the faint of heart, but it's much easier with support, and you have come to the right place. Good morning, piano parents. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show today. I don't know how things are in your part of the world, but the temperatures are finally dropping where we are. I know this is not a weather report podcast, but we had a pretty brutal several last days of summer with well over 100 degree temperature days, and it's kind of nice for the temperature to be dropping, even if it's just a little bit. So I hope things are fair and comfortable where you are. On today's episode, I want to talk to you about what you should do if you've gone an entire week and your piano kid just never got to the piano to practice. What to do when you don't practice. And this topic, this idea, sprang from a social media post that I saw. I belong to several different piano teacher groups, and basically this question was posed to the group, and I was disappointed in some of the answers that I saw, some of the teachers, their response. And I wonder, you know how everyone is a little more brave when they're behind a computer screen and they can have a little bit of anonymity. Anonymous things kind of get on my nerves. I got a letter one time from someone who was trying to be helpful, but they were really only critical, and they weren't brave enough to sign their name to the letter. And ever since then, I have just kind of had this opinion that if I'm brave enough to say something, I better be brave enough to associate my name with it. And I guess that's what I do every week with the podcast. I tell you right from the beginning, this is the Piano Parent Podcast with Shelley Davis, and I firmly believe and try to be factual and truthful and honest with everything I share, but I know that on social media, sometimes people can be really brave and just really matter of fact on a post that is impersonal. I hope that the responses, I hope these teachers with their harsh responses are a little more kind in their actual studios. And I know that you have to have boundaries and all of that, but the answer that sort of encapsulated some of the negative responses went something like this. This is not a verbatim quote, and I don't even remember the name of the person that posted, but sort of my paraphrased interpretation is that they find piano kids that show up to their lesson without having practiced. They find that such a waste of time that parents send their kids to the lesson after, and in this case, after only practicing 1 or 2 days. What's the point? This poster asks. Because they feel that a student to sit at the piano who has not spent time on their lesson is annoying to this poster, and they feel like that time could have been used for another student or for that teacher to do something more productive. There are so many great quotes about perspective. And one that I'm sharing with you today, I tried to find out who said it, but it's very succinct. It says, changing your perspective changes your experience. And I feel like the teacher who had such a negative response to what they would do if a piano kid showed up to practice, they're thinking about their own missed opportunities as far as filling that spot with a more engaged student. And I thought I would share with you, piano parent, first of all, to let you know that teachers take it pretty personally. If you show up week to week and you have not spent any time on the days in between lessons working on your music. Teachers take their job very seriously, which is great. We want teachers who take their job seriously and are seeking out ways to improve their own teaching style. They're seeking out new music for students to play. Hopefully they're learning the different ways that students learn and process and receive information. You want a teacher that takes their job seriously. Part of that, in my opinion, is meeting a student where they are. And I feel like too often, if a student doesn't meet expectations, then the teacher is so ready to dismiss them from their studio. If you're not going to do what I expect you to do, then you're out of here, and I'll shuffle in another student who will do what I want them to do. I wonder if teachers have a sense of, what's the word? Kind of their own affirmation that their students are a reflection of them. And if a student isn't going to practice and then that student performs publicly and says, oh, I'm a teacher of so-and-so, and then that teacher feels like, no, I do not, don't associate yourself with me because I have higher standards than what this performance just displayed. I can relate to that a little bit, and I try to be selective about which of my students are involved in different activities. And if I don't feel like they're ready, I'm going to tell them so. If they're not ready for a festival or a performance, I'm going to let them know. I'll be honest with them, but that's more because I know that they are setting themselves up for a negative experience personally for them. Maybe some of it is selfishly motivated, that I don't want them to have a bad experience and then be known as one of my students. I do take that personally, that I want to be known as someone who does train her students well, not just on the performance aspect of it, but being able to handle different situations. But some teachers take it even more personally than seriously. If a student doesn't practice in between lessons, then the teacher sees that as a waste of time. And I had an experience years ago where I had a family, a couple of sisters that came to their lesson every week, and they didn't open their piano books. Sometimes I would put a secret message on their assignment planner. If you read this and say whatever word, or just tell me that you read this note, next week I'll give you a treat or something. And they would go weeks without even noticing that this secret message had been in there. It was a treasure that was hidden to them because they never took the time to look. And I felt guilty and I felt responsible. Maybe I'm not motivating them to practice. Maybe I need to do something else that will give them an incentive to work on their assignment on the days other than when they're sitting at my piano. So I talked to their mom because I'm feeling like she's spending time on lessons. She's spending money on lessons and time to get them to their lessons. But the mother was completely satisfied. She said that they're very busy. They've got lots of activities. And this was probably 25 years ago, maybe more. She said, I know that they don't, spend time practicing like they should. And That's primarily because we're busy every night of the week. They had extracurricular activities at school. They had other activities beyond school programming, lots of church activities, family activities. They were going and doing stuff every night. So they physically, their schedule would not allow any time for practice. And that was by design. That was how this mom set it up. She said, I don't want them to just waste their time sitting in front of the television. And that is her prerogative. I had a different parenting style. I didn't want my kids to be go, 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 busy, busy, busy all the time. Sometimes I wanted them to be bored or have to be creative to find some way to occupy their time. That's a whole conversation for a different day. But given that experience and the expectation that I learned from this mom, that kind of opened me up a little bit to not take practicing so personally. I love it when a piano kid comes to their lesson and they have thoughtful questions, curiosities about how am I supposed to play this passage? I tried it this way. I tried it this way. What would you suggest for me? Awesome. Let's talk about it. Or if they have theory homework, I tried to do these questions, but I don't understand this one part. And it may be something that I have told them 1,000 times before. But do you know what I'll do? I'll tell them 1,000 times more. Whatever it takes, and it may be a different tactic or a different approach, whatever it takes to help them have ownership of that concept or have ownership of that music, I'm happy to repeat myself more than once. Because when I have not understood something, people were kind and gracious to repeat something to me or say it to me in a different way so that I could understand. I'm glad they didn't bark at me or scold me or embarrass me. They just said it again. So my response on this thread was that I hoped that these teachers could adjust their perspective. And here are some of the ways that I suggested to this teacher that she could view that time with a student as more productive rather than a waste of her time. Maybe that time during the lesson when the student hasn't practiced, hasn't worked on their music before the lesson, maybe that time could be used in teaching them how to practice. I have a student on my roster right now, and she's very eager, and I think she wants to practice, but when she sits down to play, she just doesn't really know where to start. And she communicated that with me, and I'm so grateful that she did. And so now I am more explicit with the directions that I give to her. Start right here. Only play to right here. Here's a Post-it note to serve as a bookmark. And so play the pages that have Post-it notes. Those are your assignment. And we'll go over things maybe a little bit more during the lesson. And I'll ask her, do you feel like you'll be able to do this again at home? Do you feel like you know what to listen for? Do you know how it feels for your fingers? And I want to empower her so that she knows how to practice. Rather than getting upset with her and saying, oh, we've gone another week and you didn't practice. Let's figure out what's the holdup. What's causing the issue that you're not being successful at home. Another thing during the lesson is that I can allow them to practice, and then I can observe how they process unfamiliar music. I'm thinking of another family in my studio, and they do practice a lot. They just transferred in from another teacher, and I'm so grateful to have them. But as I'm getting to know these students, I'm watching, and they are not very comfortable playing unfamiliar music in front of me. I don't know how they go about practicing at home, but I'm wondering what I can do to help them enhance their sight reading ability. I feel like that's a little bit of the holdup, that they're not real sure about maybe the note names of the lines and spaces. I feel like they're having to really work hard to process that information. And somehow they do it at home. And I am proud of them. I applaud them for that. But I want to see if I can unravel whatever is tangled up and make their sight reading so much easier. I don't want them to have to, I do want them to practice, but I don't want their practice to be so tedious and so labor intensive. I want to make it a little bit more of an enjoyable experience for them. And that is something that I would not have noticed if I hadn't asked them to play some unfamiliar music during the lesson. I think it's always interesting to see what types of motivation what types of motivation work for different kinds of students. In my studio this year, we are doing just a points campaign where I divided my studio into 2 teams. We've got Team Joe, that's named after Johann Sebastian Bach, and Team Mo, named after Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. So Team Joe and Team Mo are going head-to-head every week, and students can earn points for their team based on practicing. They get 1 point for every day they practice, but then they also get other kinds of points for listening to podcast episodes or researching some history, or maybe getting smart with their music, or playing a piece that wasn't part of their assignment. They've gone above and beyond my expectations. And that type of motivation is really connecting with some of my students. They want to be the top practicer for their team every week, or they are a little upset. What's the matter with the rest of my team? The team, whatever, Team Mo won and they're on Team Joe. And what's the deal with the rest of my teammates? They need to be pulling their weight. Some of my students are not motivated by the team challenge or the point system at all. They practice, or maybe they don't practice, but it doesn't have anything to do with the points. So I need to figure out something else that motivates them. Is it music, different kinds of music that they need to be playing? Is that what will motivate them? Would they be more motivated to work on memory pieces? I have a completely different chart where they can track their memory pieces. We call it a Song Sunday. And some students want to finish their Song Sunday before anybody else does. So I've got lots of different motivational tools, and I'm happy to use whatever will connect with a student at whatever season they're in. Sometimes one thing works for a while, and then it gets old, and then we have to shift gears and try something else. Above all, I want to offer grace to my students. Like I was saying before, there have been times when I missed the mark somehow. Either I didn't understand a concept, or I showed up late because of whatever reason I showed up late, or I missed someone's expectations, and they offered me grace. Now, sometimes I've gotten scolded or I've had negative consequences, and I own up to those. But when someone can just be gracious with me, oh, thank you. What a relief. I was already feeling guilty that I let you down. But the fact that you're being so gracious makes me even feel worse that I let you down. And I don't use grace as a manipulative, but I do know that I want that to be extended to me. And so I try to extend it to my students. Another thing is that I want piano to be a soft place to land. Playing the piano shouldn't add more stress to my students' lives. I've got several high schoolers this year that are in advanced placement courses, or they're doing dual credit through their high school. And those are lofty aspirations, but that's a lot of pressure. I hope that they are able to just enjoy being a teenager, enjoy their high school years. They'll be gone so quickly. And I know that it's important to try to prepare for your future and set yourself up to be in a good position for college and all of that. But I also hope that they're able to slow down and just enjoy this season of life. And when it comes to piano, I don't want that to be another stress. So those students are probably not involved in a lot of festivals or taking a theory exam and working toward medals and other types of musical achievements. They are just playing music that they enjoy because that can be a nice respite from all of the other tasks and responsibilities that they are accountable for. So I don't know what your situation is. If you have a teenager who is very busy and maybe you need to communicate with your teacher that I understand that we are not really meeting your practice expectations week after week, but I want to communicate with you and let you know that we value our lessons, we value our time with you, and if you can meet us where we are and kind of work around this season of our lives, we would very much appreciate it. I think communication with your teacher is massively important. Because as I said before, some teachers take it personally. Some teachers feel responsible that they're not meeting parents' expectations. But if you can communicate with your teacher and everyone be on the same page about what you're hoping to accomplish through lessons with this teacher in their studio, then I think your piano kid will be all the better for it, with a lot less stress and anxiety. Maybe your piano kid is younger and piano is one of the few activities that they're responsible for, and you need some help from your teacher to impress upon your child how important it is to practice in between lessons. And so your teacher can be an ally there too. We can turn up the heat a little bit if we need to and hold them accountable. I tell parents all the time, you be the cheerleader. You're the one that's the encourager, and you try to praise them when they do get to the piano without having to be reminded. You praise their efforts, and I'll be the one that corrects things. If I see that they're playing, ignoring rhythm, or they're missing notes on the staff, or they're just not listening to their playing, I'll be the coach, you be the cheerleader. But let's communicate with each other so that we can do whatever your piano kid needs, whether it's a little more, I started to say a little more pressure, whether it's a little more accountability to make sure they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. There is a place for responsibility and accountability, or whether it's to ease up a little bit and give them a little bit of space, a little bit of grace. Meet your piano kid where they are, what they need, and communicate that with your piano teacher. You may be like that parent that I had in my studio 20 plus years ago, and you may not be particularly concerned with progress. Maybe you view piano lessons as a positive activity for your child that brings another adult into their lives that will encourage them, that will listen to them, that will invest in them. Whatever piano lessons are to you, communicate that with your child and your teacher so that everybody is on the same page for the good of your child. They have the rest of their adult lives to be responsible and accountable and whatever sorts of adjectives I can think of, under stress, anxious about meeting deadlines. They will experience that in their adult years. I don't want too much of that in their childhood. At the same time, I recognize that childhood is when they develop some of those good habits that will help them to be successful as adults. So I feel like it's a really fine balancing act of what we need to do. One final thought that comes to mind is I have had parents text me and say, "Oh, we haven't had a chance to practice. It's been a crazy week. Do you want us to skip the lesson, or do you want us to go ahead and come?" Always my answer is yes. please come on to your lesson, because I would rather have an opportunity to meet with your child. We can practice together during their lesson, and hopefully that will springboard them into a successful week of practicing. If you didn't practice in the previous week and then you skip the lesson because you didn't practice, I feel like it is really, really hard to find your own motivation to get back at it and try again. I feel like you're just going to continue that downward spiral unless you have, Newton's laws of motion. An object at rest will stay at rest. An object at motion will stay in motion, unless acted upon or something or in every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. I need to go back to my physics class. I feel like if you had a week that was just not where you wanted it to be, don't avoid your lesson, because that just continues on that path of not getting back on track. Go ahead and acknowledge what happened to your teacher, let them know, and then hopefully they will be able to meet your piano kid where they are and offer them something to motivate them, bolster them, and then let's go into the new week with a fresh, clean slate. Let's try again. And then you can, rather than an object staying at rest, rather than having a piano kid who hasn't practiced and having them continue to not practice, maybe that reaction from your teacher will spur them on so that we have a new trajectory for the new week where they do practice. They do find motivation in playing their music. So for you, piano parent, do everything that you can to set up your piano kid with a regular practice habit. But if something happens and they're not able to get in the practice, own it. Confess it to your teacher, and then start over with the new week and try again. Thank you so much for listening today. I appreciate you more than I can adequately express. And if you find that the episode has been helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could share it with your friends. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. And that's the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for hanging around all the way to the end. If you haven't done so already, this would be a great time for you to hit the subscribe button. If you're listening through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever your favorite podcast player is, hit subscribe so you will be the first to receive next week's episode. I would love to connect with you. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Piano Parent Podcast, and you could just email me, Shelley at pianoparentpodcast.com.